If you're just starting your organization's journey to the cloud, today I'm going to go over my top 10 must-ask questions. Just like virtualization a decade ago, cloud is here to stay, and cloud means substantial change in the way your organization manages and operates its IT foundation. Most marketing literature says you should go all into the cloud and now. I don't agree with that approach at all. My approach with any IT task is to consider the best tool for the job. The cloud is the right tool for a lot of use cases, but it is certainly not the right platform for all use cases. So what questions should you ask to set the proper direction from the start? From tackling a lot of cloud architectures and migrations, I've come up with a list of the top 10 questions that you should have answers to before you start considering migrating your enterprise databases to the cloud. Not having these answers can lead to unintended consequences and a significant effort to undo that choice and waste the one thing you don't have, time. So let's get started. The first question is, why are you moving to the cloud? Why consider it? It sounds simplistic to ask, but having a solid use case that provides tangible benefits is primary. There's got to be a quantifiable reason, such as cost savings, or providing a competitive advantage to your business, or looking to modernize your data platform, and not just because you hear that everyone else is going to the cloud. Identifying why you want to move to the cloud begins the path to help you understand how you want to use the cloud. That leads into the second question. How do you want to use the cloud? Again, the marketing literature says all in and move everything right now, but nothing could be further from an absolute all or nothing path. There are so many use cases that I could spend the rest of the month listing them off here. We see a number of groups that organizations usually fall into for how they want to use the cloud. Some are just testing the waters and using it for offsite backups. Some are finding it cheaper and easier to use for an offsite disaster recovery platform instead of having to maintain a second data center full of equipment and manage the replication. Others want to use it for burst scalability for specific projects or rapid increases of volume to their business. Other organizations want to just leverage some services out in the cloud, such as data lakes for data loads or business intelligence services that are much easier to use in the cloud. Others are looking to scale the data to get these services closer to their users. Or some organizations are all in. They've realized they're not in the data center business and want to be done with managing these platforms by themselves. It's up to you and your organization to figure out how you want to best use the cloud. The third question is, what cloud database services do you want to use? Again, this sounds very straightforward, but it has so many factors to consider. Do you just need a simple database for a simple task? Do you have dependencies on multiple databases where you might need a database instance in the cloud so that you can lift and shift your platform quickly? Or do you have specific reasons why you might need an underlying operating system to handle all the permutations of your tasks and processes? These questions will help steer you to which level of database as a service are ideal for a given workload. And it's very situational. Rarely does a fixed topology work for all database workloads. The fourth question to consider is, what are your availability and recovery requirements? Do you have a defined recovery point or recovery time objective for each application stack, not just each component? What happens to the business if these service level agreements are not met? Have you defined a number of situations that are common enough to want a specific plan for each one? If these service level agreements have not been defined, then the unwritten rule is that the business expects immediate recoverability and no data loss. Engineering for that level of expectation tacks on about 3 zeros to any quote. Make sure that these are defined, and then your team can work from these requirements. The various cloud platforms out there have their SLAs defined in clear terms. If these SLAs are inadequate for your needs, but you feel that a particular cloud service is the right choice for you, you might have to complement their availability features with an additional layer of availability within the database engine. Design for what you need, but don't over-engineer it. Question 5 is, what are your security requirements? The common response is that everything is locked down perfectly and nothing could ever get in. However, have you seen what your security is like in your on-premises data center? I'm sure that nice young man is just on a field trip learning about data centers. Anyway, Cloud is inherently more secure than your on-prem data center and databases, as the default in the cloud is to have everything locked down, but the default in your own environment might have everything wide open with selective services locked down. I always start with the basics. What sort of data do you have? What compliance regulations are you under? Who needs access? And is all of this documented? Question number 6 is, how much performance do you actually need in your target platform? This always goes back to a common theme that I see advising companies. You need a good, solid compute resource consumption baseline in order to figure out the sizing of your cloud services. Assigning resources that are needed, nothing more, nothing less, will maintain performance but will help keep the cost down. There's no good single tool to help you identify these performance requirements, as it requires multiple layers of introspection and application awareness to make sure that the metrics presented are accurate for that application. Work with all of your teams to understand the demand on the platform and the compute resources that are actually needed, and then scale your target platform accordingly. Then, and the most important thing, test and validate that the target platform is fast enough to maintain performance for your applications. Question 7 is, how are you migrating your data to this target cloud platform? It's sometimes not as simple as a backup and restore. It all depends on the service type that you're migrating to and the service you're migrating from. It could be you're migrating to a SQL Server virtual machine in the cloud, and thankfully, that is as straightforward as a backup and restore or other traditional migration methods. But it might not be that simple. If you're migrating to a SQL database or a managed instance, you might have to do a more modern migration service that can accommodate constantly streaming the data in as it changes to minimize your outage window. All of this comes from your choice of the service destination. Question number 8 is the one that can cost you a lot if you get it wrong. Have you validated your SQL Server licensing needs? How are you currently licensed? Have you explored any of the benefits that come from transitioning your licensing to the cloud? Are you licensed in a way that you even can? Make sure to manage your performance demands so that you can right-size your destination and keep the costs down. Question number 9 is one of the biggest items for your Chief Financial Officer. Have you calculated the monthly cost of your cloud services? To make sure that this is a fair discussion, can you calculate an on-premises equivalent cost by month for each of your servers? This includes fixed costs, such as your compute, storage, virtualization, operating system, and SQL Server licensing. In addition, factor in the other implicit costs that are harder to calculate, such as power, cooling, rack space, or the staff time to manage the physical platform. We're not talking about the things that have to be done in the cloud as well, such as application-level maintenance. If you can accurately compare these costs, you can start to figure out if the cloud is going to cost you more, stay the same, or save you money. Also, one of the biggest myths in the cloud is that you're charged by what you consume. Some cloud services are actually charged like this, such as blob storage, network traffic, or DNS lookups. Other items, including many in the data platform space, are charged by allocation. If you spin up a $20,000 a month SQL managed instance in the cloud and then forget about it, guess what? Whether or not you use it is irrelevant. You're going to be charged for it. This is one of the biggest gotchas that gets organizations into trouble. This all goes back to my right-sizing question number 6, because over-allocating resources in the cloud incurs much higher costs. If you need those resources, great! Life goes on. If you don't, you're still going to get charged for it, even if you're not using all of it. Last, but certainly not least, question number 10 is one of the most indeterminate questions that you might not yet have an answer for. What are your future needs? Do you see a need to integrate into a database with cross-database calls that might prohibit the use of a SQL database? What if your user volume quadruples in the next few months or years? What business changes do you see coming? Or what upcoming initiatives do you have that might change your direction? Or more importantly, do you have systems that you need to modernize to boost business value? How can you embrace cloud to improve your business during these changes? As you can see, there are a lot of questions that you need to have answers to help you migrate to the cloud. These are all things that you need to have answered before you start the migration path, because if you don't, you're going to lose time, it's going to be overcomplicated, and you may end up having to roll back from certain systems and certain platforms to adjust as you learn and grow as a cloud adopter. Make sure that you understand what you're getting into. Cloud is a great tool for a lot of cases. It may not be for everything, but you have to make sure that you do it right to get the most out of it. That concludes my top 10 questions, and then some, to ask before moving to the cloud. If you found today's discussion helpful, please like this video and subscribe for future C-level data platform strategies.